Hi guys, welcome to episode 28. I'm Jennie O'Connor and I research and write about mastering your mindset so that you can stop settling for less, start asking for more, and finally do the thing that scares you. You know, like taking a leap by leaving a job that's soul-sucking to pursue a creative path that you actually love. Exactly the kinds of things that we talk about on this show. If you have already subscribed, you are awesome and I love you. And if you are just tuning in for the first time, do be sure to hit subscribe because I've got some more episodes of the Courage series coming up for you. And my mission in life is to get all of us to create our brain children and bring them to fruition for all of the world to see. But it takes courage to do that. So I'm hoping the next few episodes will help you level up your courage game. Today, though, I am talking to the amazing Laura Maya, who I basically want to be when I grow up. And two problems with that. One, she's younger than me, so it doesn't really make sense. And also, I know I say that about a lot of the guests that I bring on this show, and I completely mean it. 100% sincere every time I say it, but legit, Laura's life is the life I would choose for myself if I could choose anything. Laura is a writer, nomad, and change maker who has traveled all over the world, worked in more than 40 different businesses, and learned 4 languages. She helps digital nomads and entrepreneurs with project management, people and culture consulting, and accountability coaching. Over the last decade, Laura has been actively involved in the modern abolition movement and co-founded grassroots nonprofit organization aimed at preventing human trafficking in the Nepali Himalayas. She also spent several years managing an off-grid private island in the South Pacific Kingdom of Tonga. And that is just the tip of the iceberg, you guys. So let's dig into her fascinating life, shall we? Hi, Laura. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's good to meet you finally.
It is so good to meet you. I am so excited to have you here today. And I just have to tell all of the listeners, like, I am officially a cyber stalker. Like, I stalk people. Like, that's just a normal Tuesday for me, you know? And the thing is, it's one thing entirely when someone has already agreed to be a guest on my show, because then it's not really stalking, it's research, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the case with Laura, you guys, I found her months and months and months ago, and I started cyber stalking all the way back then because I was just fascinated. Like, every single new thing I learned about you, I was like, ooh, I want to ask her about that. So this is a long time coming that we are finally getting to talk here today. And I couldn't be more excited. And I have like 1,000 different things that I want to talk to you about. And I just think it's fun. It makes me feel like my stalking is justified. So
Absolutely. I'm glad you stalked. I'm not sure. I think I might have been stalking you first though. So I think I feel like maybe I was following you first.
I mean, I doubt that. I really,
it
really has been a while, but you received my outreach so generously and you weren't like, hey, crazy lady, like, go away.
No, not at all.
All right. So let's just dig in here. You are a nomad. You travel around in a tiny house on wheels, right?
Yes.
How long have you been doing that for?
That's relatively new. So I've been living sort of nomadically since 2001. So next month, August, is my 20-year nomadiversary. So the nomad thing's been a while, but the house bus, whatever you want to call it, tiny house on wheels, that was end of 2019. So we bought it just after Christmas 2019 when COVID was not like even a word in my vocabulary. And we thought we would travel around Australia for a year and then move back to France. And that's sort of what we thought. That was it really. And then COVID hit and lockdowns hit. And so now, I'm locked down in a bus. But
for better, for worse.
For better, for worse. So it'll sort of be 2 years, I guess, by the time we leave Australia. Yeah.
And then the plan is to go back to France at that point. Okay. And so you do this with your husband, and I have to know, is your husband also an everything enthusiast like you?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I thought you were going to ask about my parents because you do that with all your other podcast guests. But
I do.
Which is also, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think I'm the I'm not going to say black sheep. I'll say unique butterfly in my network.
See, I ask about your husband because I think it's a test of a relationship, and it proves you have a really strong relationship if you can travel together. But I think to add to that, living in a teeny tiny space together really, really signifies that your relationship is solid if you can make that work. So I wondered if his understanding of you was aided by him also being multi-passionate. But he lets you do your thing and spread your wings and fly, even if he doesn't understand it always.
Yeah, no, we always call ourselves, the frog and the butterfly. Like, he's the guy on the ground, just, keeping me grounded. And I'm the butterfly, like, oh, I have an idea. I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. And he's just like, yeah, okay, we'll wait and see if that one passes. And I'll wait for the next idea. Yeah, no, he's a rock solid kind of person. But where we meet, I suppose, is that we have this minimalism, simple living kind of travel thing in common. So even though he's not an everything enthusiast, we both have the same sort of values about wanting to live with not much and have the freedom to be able to move.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, like, where do you find a guy who's like, yeah, I don't need to have roots. Like, I'll just move around and do whatever on any given day. Because I have to actually quote you here. Spend your days meandering through tiny rural towns looking for awesome little artisan cheese and chocolate shops. For starters, I must say, I don't know why everyone wouldn't want to do that every day of their lives as long as they're on this earth.
Yeah, and there are a lot of good cheese and chocolate shops here.
Yeah, oh my God. How did you find a guy who was he always like, yeah, let's move wherever, I don't care? Or did you have to talk him into it? How did that work?
No, we met in Peru, actually. So I guess, you meet a wanderer while you're wandering, really. I'd been living, so I left in 2001 to go traveling, and he left when he was 17, I guess, so 1998. So he's been on the road even longer than I have. And our paths crossed in Peru, and he was with somebody else at the time. He'd had a sort of travel romance that he'd hooked up with 3 days before I met him, but we met each other and we just kind of knew, which was, a bit awkward. Nothing happened for a long time until after that, his relationship with her had ended. And then we kind of just had this, well, I'll meet you in tropical far north Queensland for a week, and then we'll go back to our normal lives being single, and I'll meet you in Paris for a week. And, so we did that for 3 years. And then he turned up one day and said, let's get married. And I was like, okay. And so 9 weeks later, we got married, and then that's it. We've just been wandering the world together ever since. So yeah, I don't know. Peru is maybe a good place to find people. I'm not sure.
I mean, asking for a friend, that friend is me. But so spontaneity is obviously your thing for both of you. I mean, if you got married 9 weeks after he proposed, that's, yeah,
it was kind of like, well, we want to be together. We don't have a visa to be in each other's countries. Oh, well, let's get married, see how that works out. And it was a bit of a risk, and it paid off. Yeah.
Wow. That's a great story. It gives me hope.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I always thought that I actually never wanted to get married. I didn't really want to be in a relationship. And so I really wasn't, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I wasn't looking, and you just kind of, I don't know, stumbled across him.
That's when it happens, so they say, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how does the van life thing is just that I'm totally fascinated by it. How does it work? Do you guys have a plan where you're going? Do you just wake up one day and say, hey, let's go?
We have no plan. I'll be honest with you, I struggle with that a little bit. Like, I enjoy the van life. So we have a Nissan Civilian minibus. So it's 6.9 meters long by, I think, 2.2 meters. It depends on the week. So we do a lot of house sitting. So maybe we'll have the bus parked up for a few weeks while we're taking care of somebody's house and animals. Then we'll jump back in the bus and we'll just go park in the bush or on a beach or somewhere and follow our noses a little bit. I think I probably could do with a little more certainty than that. But my husband likes the adventure and the spontaneity. So that's what we do.
Interesting. So his work is the decluttering stuff,
so
right?
He works as a professional organizer and declutterer. So he's the ultimate minimalist, but he's the kind of person that is like, he's so productive. He can get so much more done in a day than a normal human. And I don't know why. So his business is stepping into people's lives and helping get them organized, really.
Huh. I mean, it makes so much sense if you're living out of a teeny tiny space that both of you would have simplicity and, few material possessions as one of your values. I moved across the country a few years back and sold all of my stuff.
I heard about that on one of your podcasts. Very brave.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, or crazy.
Brave.
But I have not wanted to reacquire things since then, because I'm very enamored with the nomadic lifestyle. So that was one of the businesses that you created because it was a burgeoning idea in your head, right? Yeah. And so you admitted to me that you might be kind of losing interest in letting him take over, right?
Yeah, which is what happens with everything. I think my passion for that business was because I wasn't a minimalist to start with. So I think a lot of these people that run these professional organization or decluttering businesses are the kind of people that are naturally that way inclined. Whereas I was like crazy hoarder, 42 handbags, like owned all the stuff, like get a little stain on my shirt at lunchtime, I'll go and buy a new one so that I don't have to sit with a stain on my shirt all day at work.
Wow, okay.
That used to be me. Like a lot of debt. So credit card debt up into the 5 figures. And then I married David and he was a minimalist, and that kind of, and so I shifted my perspective a lot with him. We cleared down my debt. And then once I got into minimalism, it became really addictive, like getting rid of stuff. And then, the less I have, the more free I become. And that's just a really addictive feeling. So now I just try and get rid of everything that I can so that I've got as little as possible.
Yeah, I have to agree. Like I have felt the same way. I mean, it has made me sort of see everything through a different lens. And I go to my mom's house and I'm like, this is too much stuff. Gotta get rid of this stuff, I have to say, I regret having gotten rid of my art supplies. So that is one of the things I've had to reacquire. And I've always thought, I like the idea of living in a tiny house, but I have too many kitchen gadgets. I'll be totally honest. I cannot give up my Vitamix or my Soda Stream or my food processor or it just like the list keeps going. My air fryer, I really, really like it. So that's the only
list of those things though.
Do you really?
Yeah, the Soda Stream sits by the door on the bus, and we have an air fryer that we just have to move around the bus. I've got like the NutriBullet. We had the food processor for a little while. We just got rid of it because it broke. But yeah, you can. I mean, you'd be surprised how much you can fit in a bus, actually.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
And we hold on to. We don't. It's not a game or a quest to see how little we can own. It's just the things we own. We want to make sure that they're the things that add value to our life.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. Like
fryer,
I could leave the ice cream.
A lot of value. Yeah, exactly.
But, okay. So that's good. That gives me some hope that I might be able to do it one day. So all this moving, you lived in 12 countries. Is that right?
About that. Yeah, I think.
And traveled to almost 50. So
yeah. Through almost 60, I've traveled. Like, is that my total? If you're a country counter, like that's I think I'm at 59.
Oh, okay, so almost 60 now. Wow. All right. Yeah. So where did your wanderlust come from?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was a combination of being obsessed with playing Carmen Sandiego when I was a kid on my Commodore 64 in the 80s.
I remember that. Wow.
Do you?
Yeah.
I loved that. And you have to chase it around the world, and you have the World Almanac, and you're looking for all these different facts about different countries. But yeah, I was an exchange student for the first time in California. I was an exchange student in Tehachapi in California.
Really?
Yeah, in a little town called Bear Valley Springs. I think it's a really small community, and there's a prison there, and then and then Tehachapi was where I went to high school for a couple of weeks. So I'd always had that, I don't know, travel bug, or that feeling like I wanted to explore other places, but not just to visit. I always had this sensation I wanted to go to those places and feel what it is like to be from there, so I don't enjoy. I'm a terrible traveler as a tourist. I don't like going to tourist attractions. I don't like really going to museums and monuments and things. I'd rather go to school somewhere. And I don't know, that's always been my way. And then I was an exchange student in Norway when I was 16 for a year. And then I came back to Australia. I finished school, spent a couple of years working, and then thought, no, I'm ready to travel again, and moved to Scotland in 2001. And I thought it was a gap year. I guess I just thought I'd be gone for a year, but yeah, 16 years now.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. Here we are. I just keep moving.
Yeah, I can completely relate to the wanting to live like the locals live thing. And I mean, I spent 3 months in Italy and really didn't go to the tourists. I mean, it's like, especially in Rome, the Colosseum, I didn't do, things that I came back and people were like, what? Why did you not do? And I was like, because I just wanted to like meet people and have conversations and get lost in the streets and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Wander around looking for artisan cheese and chocolate shops. That's all I wanted to do.
Food. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Like there was a day I spent in Prague. It was my favorite day. I went and had sushi. I had an acupuncture appointment with this lady, and she was telling me about her life while she was sticking needles in me. And then I went and bought a pair of socks, and got chatting with this guy in the underwear department, and like that was my favorite day in Prague. I didn't go to any of the tourist sites, but yeah, so that's kind of how I travel. And because I work online now, I mean, over the last 6 years, I've sort of been building my online business. So I can just take my work wherever I go. So really you can just pitch up in any country and, log onto the Wi-Fi and stay there for as long as you need or want. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the actual dream for me. I mean, and I've, done it here and there a little bit, but I'm really itching to get back out on the road again. It is hard to do and podcast. I will say.
Yes. I can imagine with all the equipment and everything, I'm needing a quiet space, and
yeah, it requires a little bit of planning for that. But, so where's your favorite place? Do you have one?
Favorite place? I think we spent 3 months in Santorini in 2018, I think, in the winter.
Okay.
It was cold and it was windy. It's really windy, but there were no tourists there during that time, which in the summer it's quite jammed. And so it was unbelievably romantic and just lovely. And I went to Greek school there for a little while, even though I didn't, that's an everything enthusiast thing. I was just like, I'm going to learn Greek.
Sure.
Let's move to Santorini. And then I went to Greek school and I learned the alphabet and I learned how to order wine and, souvlaki. And then I was like, I'm done. Okay. I can move on to the next thing now. Yeah.
Okay. So you actually speak 4 languages or sort of, so that's not one of the languages you speak.
No, I have studied to become fluent in 4 languages that I have largely now forgotten. So I was fluent in Norwegian when I lived in Norway for a year. I learned Spanish when I was living in Spain and Honduras and Ecuador in sort of around 2002, 2004, but I haven't used my Spanish since then. So although I was fluent then, I wouldn't be now.
Sure.
And then I learned French because my husband's French and I couldn't speak with his family. So we moved to France and I learned French there. And then when we were working in Nepal for a number of years, I learned to speak Nepali. But I would say my Nepali is like a very fluent caveman Nepali. I've never really learned to construct the sentences properly.
Okay.
But I've got a massive vocabulary. So I just like throw words out and hope something will stick.
Hope someone somewhere understands.
Yeah.
Wow. See, yeah, that's another thing. Like if I had enough time in this lifetime to go visit a country and learn the language, because I'm also very fascinated by, I'm fascinated by everything that you do. All of the stuff you do, I love too.
It's an everything enthusiast thing though, isn't it? Like, yeah.
It is. It definitely is. I noticed in one of your blog posts, you wrote, I love it when things don't turn out as planned. Is that something you had to adopt because of doing so much travel? Cause I know that unexpected stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I don't know. I like change. Is it because I like change? No, I don't know. I don't know. It's a thrill I get when I've got something planned and then that person contacts me and says, oh, I can't do that. And then all of a sudden I have this free gap in my schedule that I can fill with something awesome.
Yeah. Have an adventure.
Yeah, I remember one time that when the volcano erupted in Iceland, and I had a trip to Morocco booked, and I remember feeling like I should be really disappointed because I've always wanted to go to Morocco and I'd never even set foot on the African continent before, and but I wasn't. I was just like, oh well, now we do something else. It was, I don't know, I just get excited by all the possibilities that gap opens up for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is
Yeah,
that
it's funny to me when people don't like change, which I feel like is the majority of the world, that
Yeah.
I'm in my comfort zone and this is where I feel safe and all of that. And I'm the kind of person who's just like, ooh, what does that mean is going to happen now?
Yeah.
So
And
I have
something
this
cool
trip.
always happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a trip planned. I'm supposed to leave on Sunday to go camping, and I was going to go to Glacier National Park, which is in Montana at the top of the country. That
Yeah.
whole part of the country is on fire right now,
Oh gosh, I
which
haven't
is
even heard that.
terrible and tragic, and I hate it. And also, it meant that I couldn't go. I mean, I'm not going to just drive towards the fire. That makes no sense.
Generally a bad
So,
idea.
yeah. So it was this whole like reconfiguring what I was going to do and figuring out, where I could go, where there is no danger of fire, where it's cool. I'm seeking cooler weather right now because it's very hot here. And but always in the back of my mind going, yeah, it's mildly inconvenient that I have to like, cancel reservations and make new reservations. But I know that there's almost like a reason for this, like something great is going to happen. And I feel like if you just enter any new activity with the like, something great is going to happen, isn't it? Like you're bound to have a good time, right?
Absolutely. Like I look at the worst things that have happened to me when I'm traveling, and they always led to something amazing. And in the moment you think, oh, why has this happened?
Yeah.
Could this be any worse? I just want to run home to my mum and dad, or, whatever.
Yeah.
But it always leads to something incredible, to a new country or a new connection or a new job, or, there's a wonky kind of crazy path that we're all following, but I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah. It's huge when you can learn to trust that like this is happening for a reason. I'm not sure that everybody can get on board with that, but it's an awesome place to be, because I'm just like, well, at a minimum, this will be a great story.
Yes, exactly. Just trust and surrender. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure you can relate because you are a writer as well. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So actually the list of things that you do currently is quite lengthy. And so I have some questions.
Okay, fire away.
So island marketing, what does that mean?
I actually just handed that job over after a number of years. I handed that over last week. So I lived on a very small patch of coral in the South Pacific for 3 years. And at first I was the manager of the island, but that really did not suit my personality. And then I moved into a marketing role. And so it was being the liaison between the island and wholesalers in Australia, to try and promote the island, doing the social media, that kind of thing, redoing the website, but I just
for tourism, to get people to come visit.
Tourism, which is all fallen apart now because of COVID. The borders have been closed. So so they don't need me anymore. So we've just
for 3 years you were on that tiny little, what was it called?
Yes, it's a tiny island called Fafa.
Fafa.
Fafa Island in Tonga. So
that sounds incredible. Was it great?
It was amazing. It was, I mean, there's no roads, there's no vehicles, there's no shops, there's no nothing. The only way, like the nearest shop is 7 kilometers away by sailboat. And it's like, the wallpaper on your phone. I pinched myself. Like we slept in a glass box right on the ocean, and the sunrise woke us up every morning. It was incredible. So that was really cool. And then we just moved back from there to Australia before we bought the bus.
Wow. Yeah. That sounds, it kind of gave me the chills as you were describing it. That sounds amazing. Oh my God. I love it. So talk to me about people and culture consulting for startups, because you said that that's a good job for multi-potentialites. So explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I do a lot of talent sourcing, hiring, virtual team management for startups. So there's lots of different startups, mostly based in Sydney, that I do that with. So it's just, yeah, screening applicants and finding the right people for startups. And the reason I said that that's a great job for multi-potentialites is because usually, like in a startup, they don't need specialists. They need somebody who can wear all the hats because there's so much that needs to be done. So
I see.
They're recruiting for a sales development representative, but it'd be really great if that sales development representative also, you know, maybe knew a little bit about, you know, a bit more digital marketing, or I don't know, has a more skills than just that one narrow thing that they do, because the nature of startups is that they can change so quickly, they can change directions, and they need the people within their organizations to be able to change with them.
Yeah.
And to spread themselves a bit thinner. So yeah, so when we're, you know, looking for people who are who fit these roles, I'm like, oh no, these people are all too specialist. We need more multis to be a part.
Yeah. That's so cool because Perry Noper, who I interviewed, who has started the Octopus Movement for,
I heard that one. Yep.
Yeah. He interviewed me recently and asked if I could, like, what are good jobs for people like us? And I had a few ideas, but ultimately I was kind of stumped. I was like, I don't know. I think it sort of depends on what your interests are. And I do think that list could be quite long at the end of the day, but that's kind of perfect. Like, it makes me want to make that connection between you and him, because I know that there are people that are like, where do I belong? Like, where would I be best fit? And that sounds like it would be a really great match. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And when I interview multi-potentialite types for these roles, quite often they tell me, when I say, you know, so why are you leaving the job that you're in currently to look for something else? And they'll say to me, I joined that startup when we were 3 people and we had to do everything. And now it's, you know, listed on the stock exchange and there's 300 employees. And now they just want me to do this one thing. And I want to go back to the beginning again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Can totally relate. Well, that's really cool. We'll make that connection after.
Yeah.
So since you do, and there's way more on this list that you say that you are currently doing, what's your time management system or your project management system? What does that look like? Do you have any tips or valuable advice you can impart?
I'm just imagining my husband listening to this interview going, no, she doesn't have any tips, but she needs some.
Well, I mean, being all over the place is also a system, like, and if it works for you, it does. So but I'm just curious if they're like, I like the idea of, you know, the school system, like an hour on this task and then an hour on this task. And that just sort of fulfills my need for variety. How do you work usually?
Yeah, it's just chaos. But it works. I get everything across the line, and I do it to a standard that I'm happy with. I think it was your interview, was it with Polly, where she said that something about what did she say? It was like having that structure that you have with your kids, like bringing that into your life. And
it was Polly,
Yeah, I need to try that. No, usually it's just, so for example, one of my clients that I work for a Canadian-based startup, and I do some virtual team management, some matchmaking within their team. And I just work in the mornings because that's when they're online. So I just kind of start with that. And then I have another client that I have to work with at the end of the day. And then I just kind of try and jam everything else in between. I just follow my nose, really. Yeah, I could definitely be doing this better.
But I wonder, it's funny because I think as much as I try to implement systems, I'm learning from a mentor right now who was like, I create a system, then I hack the system. And I was like, oh, that is like in a nutshell what I do. I wondered if maybe you were just motivated by deadlines. Like, you know, that this thing has to happen by this time. So now is when you're going to do it, kind of thing. Cause that's sometimes how I work as well.
I think have you heard of Gretchen Rubin's 4 tendencies?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm an obliger, which means that I respond very well to external expectations. So if I set myself a goal that's just for me and nobody's expecting it of me, I will not do it. Like, I just won't do it. There's nothing I can do to force myself to do it. It just won't happen. But if I've got clients, a bird just hit the window. Sorry.
Oh my God. That was so loud. That poor bird. Oh my God.
Just flew straight into it. What was I saying? It's really distressing.
You're an obliger who responds to external pressure.
That's right. Yeah. So if somebody else is expecting it from me, I will turn up, and it will stress me out if I don't turn up. So I will get anything done if somebody else is asking from me. So with all of my clients, that's why it works, because I know they're expecting it from me. And my publisher at the moment with my book, she lays down, okay, well, I need you to do this now. And I know that to move forward, that has to happen. So everything ends up happening, but I honestly can't tell you how.
Wow. So that sounds like it would make being a writer really hard. Like, I know now that you have a publisher, she's keeping you on task, but prior to that, including just blogging for your own satisfaction, that sounds challenging.
That's why there's very few blog posts on my blog. I don't know if you noticed. There's like, I started the blog, I think in 2018 or 19, and there's maybe 10 blog posts on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were also fascinated by Polly then telling how she learned that structure brings bliss. And because I was just like, wow, that's not how I operate at all.
Not at all. I was soaking up her interview thinking, how does she blog every day?
Every day. I know. I'm flabbergasted to this day by everything I learned from her. So in one of the 10 blog posts that you have written, I love this. That's just why I have to quote it. You described being an everything enthusiast as the feeling that everyone else had the corner pieces of the puzzle so they could make sense of the bigger picture. And I was just clutching a few pieces of the sky. Yeah. And I just love it. I think it is such a perfect sort of lyrical sounding description of what we face, right?
Yeah. I was sure there was something wrong with me. I spent I only learned the term multi-potentialite about 3 years ago. And up until that point, I just thought that everyone else had it all figured out. And I was just this flaky dilettante who just leapt from one thing to the other and couldn't finish anything I started. And I didn't want to. And I think that was the struggle, is that I knew that I didn't want to be that person who just had it all figured out and followed a very linear path. I was happy. I felt like I'm one of the happiest people I know. I actually really love my life, and but at the same time, I'm not hitting any of those standard markers that I think society expects you to hit, to be, in inverted commas, successful. And so it was this constant struggle. So when I learned about multi-potentiality, and I read Barbara Sher's book that I can see behind you there, and Emily Wapnick's book and everything, and I cried, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just me.
Yeah.
There's other people out there like me. And then it was just this incredible self-acceptance. And I was like, oh great, this is who I am. I can just embrace it and roll with it.
Yeah. It was so weird. And I love to hear you say that you were happy. Like it is so weird to be like happy and yet be told by society that you're doing it wrong, but you're like, but I'm happy. And like all these other people over here, they are not happy. Really, it's very evident. They're grumpy all the time. I'm happy. So why, how is this doing it wrong? But I received the same message. It is like the impetus behind starting this podcast was to tell people like, it's not wrong. You're not broken. And it has felt so good to embrace that and to stop like trying to force all of my loves into one career, because I was too scared to choose one thing and leave everything else behind. So I was like, how can I be a caterer / bartender / writer? Like, how can I write about bartending? I mean, just things that won't work at the end of the day. So it's been really nice to find that self-acceptance. And it sounds like you have as well, which is great.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Particularly because I think at the time I was working for a blogger and we had created this course to help bloggers find their niche. And I was also studying coaching at the same time. And they were telling us, within the coaching field, you have to find your niche. And so I was really I was so frustrated and upset with myself because there was no niche, or I would find a niche and then I would get bored of it again, a couple of months later. And all of the logos that I had developed and the domain names that I bought,
oh my God.
Oh my goodness. And so finally I was just like, well, you know what? I'm just not a nicheable human. I just have to run with the everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. That acceptance piece is like critical for all of us. So I want to talk about your books. You have actually 2 coming out, right?
Yes. which was probably a bit too much, but it's very exciting.
That is so incredible, especially when you say that getting you to sit down and work for your own benefit is a bit of a challenge. One you are co-writing and one is just your brain baby, right?
Yeah. So one is actually all I had to do was contribute, or all I had to do. Still, for me, the writing process is hard for that reason. But yeah, I only had to contribute one chapter.
Okay.
So I haven't read the other chapters from the other women who have been invited to contribute, and I will get to read them along with everybody else. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, and then the other one is my own, which is a book I've been writing for, well, I've been working on for 7 years. And
yeah, and you said you lost interest, right?
Oh my goodness. When I finished my first draft, I was like, oh, that's it. I'm done. I wrote a book. Like, I'm multi-potentialite. I've done that thing now. I'm finished. And getting it from that point, because I finished the first draft, I think about 18 months after I started writing. Yeah, so now we're 7 years down the track.
How did you move it along if you were over it?
Yeah, my husband's been he's my biggest cheerleader. And so he acts as a bit of an accountability buddy. He really believes in the book. So that's been really good. I think the fact that I told a lot of people that I was writing it, there was that obliger thing comes into play where I felt like people kept on saying to me, so how's the book going? And I'm like, guess I better start writing that again, huh?
I have to have some kind of answer.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been hard. I think as a multi-potentialite, this is one of the toughest things I've ever done, but that's why it feels so good to be at this point where it's going to be published this year by an Australian publisher. It's going to be such a relief, I think, just to hold it in my hands and think it's done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if the process was a struggle. It sounds like an amazing story. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so it's a true story. So I think, as I mentioned before, we lived in a remote village in the Himalayas in Nepal for a number of years, working in human trafficking prevention there. And we were adopted by a local family, an elderly couple who sort of took us in, and they taught us about Nepali culture and how to live in Nepal. And after 5 years, they were really curious about where we come from, because there were so many things about us they didn't understand. So we offered, if they wanted to, that we would bring them back to France for a month, and we would travel with them through Europe so that they could explore Western culture and understand where we come from. So the story that I've written is the story of them coming to Europe and what our Western society looked like through the eyes of these two elderly Himalayan farmers who had a lot to teach us on that journey. So it's really, I mean, there's a lot of stories about my experience or our experience in Nepal, but it's mostly about their experience of our culture and what that looks like from the outside.
Yeah, I know it was a struggle, but it sounds like an important thing that needed to be made. So how exciting for you. Oh my gosh. When can that be expected to come out? Do you have a date?
So publication dates sort of around November, December. There's not a fixed date yet, but it'll be absolute latest first week of December.
Okay. I want you to give me like dates. I'm going to put it all over the place so people can.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really
I'm excited about it.
Yeah. I hope it's a story that'll inspire people. But I really wanted to create something that would help people think about the things that we just take for granted in our own lives, the things that we don't even stop to question anymore, that I certainly didn't stop to question until we took this trip.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting how, and granted, I'm about to tell a story that took place in Italy, so it's not really culturally all that different. But I remember meeting a guy and saying he took me on a few tours in the area where I was living in Bugnara, Italy, and little tiny town that's not on the tourist maps at all. And he was a great tour guide. And I said to him, like, you should do this professionally. You could make extra money. And he said, I make enough money. And I just remember going, whoa, I won't have another day in my life where I meet someone who says that, like not in Western culture anyway. And so just every now and then something like that just makes you go, I need to step back, take a look, and I can only imagine how different your story would be and their perspective on everything. So it sounds like an important book that needed to be written. So yay, congratulations.
So. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, super exciting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your newest obsession. Learning Kung Fu.
Kung Fu, oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're all, which one? I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, at the moment we're in a hard lockdown, so I can't do Kung Fu, but yeah, prior to lockdown, which had only started 5 weeks ago. Yeah, no, I've been totally obsessed, like over the top obsessed. And I think about how it must look from the outside.
How come? What made you?
I'm the least sporty person you ever imagine. I'm super placid, like somebody goes to hit me. I'm like, oh no, I'm really a bit of a wuss. But yeah, I mean, I had a few incidents when I was traveling through South America that I got mugged a lot. I have been mugged more than the average person. And held up at gunpoint and robbed at knife point and all these sorts of things. So, and it all happened in a really short space of time. So, sort of over a 6-month period in 2004. So I ever since then, I've wanted to learn some kind of martial arts, because even though you know rationally what you're supposed to do in that moment when you get attacked, your, fight flight thing kicks in and you do try and defend yourself. But if you don't know how to defend yourself, you just kind of flail around and you just, waste all that lovely adrenaline just flapping and squealing and stuff. So it's taken me 17 years to muster up the courage to do it. So I walked into a Kung Fu academy October last year, and then I've been training like 7 hours a week and going up my sashes. I'm a green sash now, from like white to yellow to green, and
that's amazing. And you said you watched Kung Fu Panda and that's what made you want to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, I was like, he's like a little bit wobbly too. And, he's just like chasing dumplings. And I thought, well, you can do it. Surely I can have a crack, right?
That is too funny. And you have a sword. Do you use a sword in Kung Fu?
I'm only allowed to use that so far for my Tai Chi. So I've been.
I didn't even know that was used in Tai Chi, but that is amazing. I have always wanted to take fencing classes. I have an obsession with swords. So.
Do it. You feel like Mulan. It's so like it's just this. I don't know, when you're holding it and you're swooshing it around in these really powerful sequences. It brings you this confidence or this feeling like I if I was in those situations where I was mugged again, I probably wouldn't be any better equipped now than I was back then. But I have a strength and a confidence in myself now that I didn't know that I would find through martial arts.
Yeah. I wonder if you'd have an ability to apply more calm, rational thinking. Cause like you just said, you might even know how to throw a punch, but you're just like in panic mode. And I know that martial arts has a lot of like sort of keeping you very centered. And I feel like that could come in very handy.
Yeah. But you should try fencing. Have you done it?
No, I actually, when I was living in Mass, there was a place that offered fencing classes, but I was taking Tai Chi. I was like, I have to pick one. And
so, yeah, right. I get it.
It's still on the list. And one of the gals, another guest on my show, Allison Alexander, her daughter is, I think 10 or 11 and just started fencing classes. I told her the other day, I was like, your daughter is my spirit animal because she's a badass. She does all of these things. And she just decided to take up fencing. Because that's what 10-year-olds do. So it's on the list. You've inspired me. If it feels that good to hold a sword, I'm definitely in.
There's something pretty spectacular about it. Yeah. I highly recommend owning a sword for, not for killing people, but
no, I'm sure I don't want to do that, but just to have one, that sounds kind of amazing.
It is.
Yeah. So what is something like you've had to, work through accepting yourself and work through, in fact, you have a quote about mental health. What is it? Lazy Sundays.
Yep.
Yeah. Are the best thing you ever did for your mental health. What do you mean by that exactly?
Yeah. I think because my weeks are quite chaotic, as because I'm trying to fit a lot in and get a lot done. And I find that my brain just hits a bit of a shutdown limit. And so now I have one scheduled day every week I call it Sunday, but sometimes it falls on a Saturday. It just depends when I can do it. And I don't turn on the internet. I'll just read a book, or maybe do some yoga or go for a walk. Or it's a day when it's just a day for me, a day to relax, when I don't have to see anybody. I don't have to leave the house. Sometimes they're naked Sundays, you know, if it's nice warm, don't have to put in any clothes, depending on where we are. But it's a day that's completely for me, that it's no shoulds. So there's no paperwork, there's no work, there's no computer, there's no nothing. And it's a complete day of switch off, like a holiday. So I take 1 day holiday every week.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you know, mental health, self-care day, like it's so important to do. So yeah. I guess that kind of leads into my question. Is there, you've learned all these different sort of mechanisms for being your best self. Is there something that you think everything enthusiasts should know? Like, is there just one piece of advice you would give?
That's a great question. Is there one thing everybody should know? I think, you know, when I first started in my coaching business, I was working a lot with multi-potentialites, which is shifting now, obviously, because I'm a multi-potentialite and I'm moving on to something else. But I think if I look at the common denominator of what all of my clients needed, it was, and I know you've spoken about this on the podcast before, but it's really just permission. I think I thought when I was coaching multi-potentialites that I would be helping them to achieve the things that they wanted to achieve and finish the things that they, you know, that they started, because that's what multi-potentialites need, but it's not actually. I think that multi-potentialites just need to feel like, or everything enthusiasts just need to feel like it's okay to be doing everything. I think they need to know that it's okay for there to be a little procrastinating in their days. I feel I actually factor in a procrastination time into my day, knowing that there'll be time that I'll lose down a rabbit hole because I'll be like, oh, do penguins have knees? Or like, how hot does it get in the Sahara? Or like, you know, I'll have these moments where I just need to know something and I'll lose an hour just finding that thing out. 100%. So I always tell the multi-potentialites that I've worked with that, you know, if you need to get 6 hours of work done, then schedule 8 hours to do it, to allow for your brain to go down all its random rabbit holes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think how interesting that you found that helping people finish wasn't truly what they most needed. Cause I feel like that's what's driving me, is like, I'm going to help people get things done, but they're not going to get things done. They're just decide it's okay to stop here and go to the next thing. So I think that's an important lesson for me to hear too, Laura.
And I think that's what we all think we need, right? Because that's what society is telling us that we need to do. We need to finish that thing that we started. But I look at a very long string of failures over the last, I'm 41 now, so 41 years. And they don't look like failures to me anymore. They just look like, you know, I've learned a tiny little bit about so many things, and it always in some random way comes together in a way that I could never have expected. And then I'll never need that thing again. You know, I recently had a situation where I helped stop a young Nepalese guy from being exploited by a company that were trying to extort him for money from a company in Tonga. It's a very random story, but I would never have been able to help that person if I hadn't have lived in Tonga and lived in Nepal and had the knowledge that I did from working in human trafficking. I randomly met this person, was able to help them. And then I thought, maybe that's the reason why I had to live in Nepal for those years and Tonga for those years and work for that nonprofit for those years, just to help that one guy. And
again, I mean, I'm such a believer in everything happens for a reason. And it's really kind of cool because sometimes you don't know what it hasn't happened yet, or maybe it just didn't register with you so like when it does and you're like, this might be why. That's really cool. It's sort of like that beautiful full circle thing. I really like it. Yeah.
Just follow your bliss wherever it takes you. It'll make sense later down the track sometime.
100%. Excellent piece of advice. I love it. So tell my listeners where they can connect with you so that they can find out when your book is coming out, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. So my website is currently being rebuilt. It's at themagickofeverything.com at the moment, but it will be lauramaya.com soon.
Okay.
Although they'll redirect to each other. And on Instagram, I'm at lauramaya writes. So,
Laura Maya writes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And I will drop all of those links into the show notes. And I just want to thank you again for coming on today. This has been so fun and it's such an easy conversation to have. I hope that we can have many more.
Yeah, thank you. I've been listening to your podcast now I think I've listened to most of your back catalog and I get so much out of it. So please just keep doing what you're doing and interviewing these amazing guests, because every single person that comes on, I learn something. I think, oh my gosh, why haven't I not been doing that? Or that simple reframe, or there's always something so I hope I've been able to do something like that for your listeners today. And please just, well, you know what, keep doing what you're doing until you don't feel like doing it anymore, and then do something else.
Best piece of advice I'm ever going to get, Laura. Thank you. Thank you so very much. And I look forward to talking to you again really, really soon.
Me too. Thanks, Jenny.
All right. Take care. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that and that maybe you can see how our varied interests and passions might overlap one day in such a way that gives you that light bulb aha moment. It was all for this. And hell, if you're enjoying the ride along the way, which hopefully you are doing more now because you have finally accepted and are embracing your uniqueness, then it's all totally worth it. Am I right? If you have not subscribed, would you please be sure to do that so that you don't miss the upcoming episodes of the Courage series? And if you would take 30 seconds and leave me a quick little review, just little 5 stars if you feel so inclined, it would absolutely make my day, and I would love you forever. Also, do come join me over on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. I am at Your Creative Fairy Godmother. And as always, I love you guys. I look forward to talking to you in the next episode.